Yeah. 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 So many lies that you hear from the net, they don't get her respect. She reporting the truth, not a check. You want an unbiased opinion straight from the chest, not a bit accomplice or someone here for a check. Tune in, these are thoughts from a lawyer on a mission who goes so hard it's like she works on commission. Trolls in the comments might say she tripping cause they lack the knowledge. They don't know they missing. Got a couple current events that you like. Wanna know about law from the eyes. Tired of all these blogs running lies because their agendas are disguised. Tune in to the intellect, cause I'm sure y'all missing all the facts of the case that she steady is gifting. Someone here for the people, man, it's so uplifting. If you ain't subscribed yet, then you just omitting facts.
You's a clown, that's what you. Why don't you call me a cardboard bishop now? Huh? You tough? Call me a cardboard bishop now.
He's not gonna call you that.
Huh? Look on Facebook Live. Call me a cardboard bishop now. You clown. That's what you are. You clown. That's what you are. Why don't you say what you say on Facebook Live, sucker?
No.
Hello, everyone. It is Pam Esquire, also known as your law intellect. If you guys could be so kind as to come in and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. Now, let me give you a few rules now. See, last night you guys were throwing me off of my square. I need to focus so that I could get through this 30-something pages of notes, okay? So we're going to try to get through it. We are going to try to get through it. So for those of you guys that don't know, I have been covering the Bishop Lamor Whitehead trial. And there are many new subscribers who are like, who in the is Bishop Whitehead? He is a pastor that I was covering out of Brooklyn, New York, who originally was robbed in his church and it went viral. And so after that, he was at a press conference, and then the reporters, he was trying to have a press conference to talk about this robbery and how the church, the pastors in the community need to come together and that we all need to work together as united church front of the body of Christ. Unfortunately, there were no pastors that showed up to support him. And but he did have some support, some reporters that were there. And he said after he said his little spiel, he said, I want to open it up for questions. Well, the first reporter said, well, what's up with the $90,000 lawsuit against the lady that was your former parishioner? I was like, huh? Then somebody said, I went to your house, Bishop, and there is a notice on your door that says that there is some type of foreclosure on your building in Connecticut. I'm like, what? What's happening here? And so on this channel, we started covering the various lawsuits. I just put his name over there in New York, and these boop, 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 these lawsuits and judgments were coming up. So we were covering him, and until a lot of these cases started, they kind of were stagnant. So back in December of 2022, and Mr. Bishop, doctor, he did get his doctorate too. And I'm gonna tell you about that when he testifies. You know, he let us know he's educated and everything. And we were covering him, and we kind of stopped, you know what I'm saying? But he ended up getting indicted. And so I told you guys, I said, well, once something happens, because we covered him a lot, then I was going to try to do the trial. Being a woman of my word, I have been here with my family for the last couple of weeks, covering this here trial. This is the third live that I have done related to this trial. And so we start out with the continuation of last night, because when we left off, we talked about text messages with Mayor Eric Adams. And basically the text messages, he was left on read a lot. He was just left on read, okay? And so this morning, even though we left early, New York traffic is ridiculous, and I still came in a little late. So when I got there, I hurry up and I grabbed my notebook and I grabbed my pen, and they had a text message on the lady that was reading the text messages. She was back on the stand. So her picture, she has the text message that she's reading, and it's on the screen. And the first thing I see on there from February 12, 22 is, Bishop, I've been calling you for 2 months. I'm sorry. This is from Bishop Whitehead. Eric, I've been calling you for 2 months. You're not answering my phone calls. So that was the first thing that I saw. Now I was like, oh man, we about to be going through the same thing we went through yesterday. So basically the government was going through various dates, of which it got to a point where Eric Adams apparently was just ignoring Whitehead. So, and Eric Adams is the mayor of New York. So on May 5th of 2022, now mind you, February 12th, he sent the text. I ain't talked to you. I've been trying to talk to you. You've been ignoring me for 2 months. May 5th, 22, he was like, he needed to talk to him. So he asked what time can he talk? Now he's trying to reach out to his assistant, Gladys, the calendar lady. And Gladys was kind of like, okay, I'll let you know. And then he's like, left on read again. Like they were trying to get through this. Lord Jesus, help me. So he was left on read, where he was kind of ignoring his phone calls again. So then on June 8th of 2022, there is another text. Now, this is the day that Lamor Whitehead was arrested. And so he called Mayor Eric Adams and said, bro, call me. This is my other number. This is my other phone. I need to speak to you, 911. So they put the text up there where he tried to call Eric Adams, Mayor Eric Adams, almost immediately, like after the FBI came. I mean, that wasn't his arrest. I'm sorry. Let me take that back. That was when the first warrant came for his phone. He was not arrested on that day. Let me retract that. So on June 8, 2022 was when he first had the contact with the police, where they came with the search warrant. And the search warrant was for the iPhones on his person. And so after the good police left, and of course the government is showing that they asked you, do you have any other phones that we can call you on? And he said no. We're going to get into that. We get to his testimony, because what his explanation for that was just, oh, okay. And so the government was showing that on June 8th, he said, yo, this is my new number, or my other phone. That's what he called it. It's not a new number. It was just a phone he had. And he was like, I need you to call me, bro, 911. Then he was like, 1 second, bro. I'm turning my other phone off. And then I think he called him, but he didn't answer. Then I asked the young lady, one of the people that was there, I was like, well, I caught the end of it. They were almost ending the text messages. So Whitehead had a birthday party. Remember, for those of you that were following him, he had a birthday party when he was turning 44. So, of course, he sent Eric Adams a flyer of the party and invited him. And so he said, let me know if you can make it. And I guess Eric Adams just responded, will do. Will do. That was pretty much all he said. So then he contacts Gladys on April 29th of 2022, and he asked Gladys, will Eric be able to make it? He's talking about his party. And he was left on read for a little while. Looking at his little phone and nothing. So then on May 5th of 2022, he said, Gladys, give me a call when you get this message. I guess Eric allegedly called him 20 minutes before. He said he's been waiting to see when he's available. He was like, he just needs a meeting with him. It can even be in the late night, a late night dinner or whatever it is. Gladys was like, okay. So then on another text in May, he calls Gladys. Gladys is Mayor Adams' assistant and says, can you please let me know when Eric can meet? No response. Nothing. It was nothing. So then I asked one of the ladies there, I said, well, what did I miss? They were like, nothing. And I was like, what do you mean nothing? I was like, I know it was some other text messages. And they were like, well, basically it was more of the same. He was asking Adams. He said Adams was telling him he needed to check his emotions. He needed to check his attitude, all of that. And then I guess he also sent Mayor Adams, I guess, a flyer of him when Whitehead was running for Brooklyn Borough president. He put a flyer on there and it was him standing next to Mayor Adams. So of course, Mayor Adams was like, take my name up off that piece. And so that's what she said had happened. So that was the part that I missed. But apparently there was, he sent the flyer and he put a picture of them two on there and Mayor Adams wasn't feeling it. So then they said that was, the end of the text messages. So then the same lady that was reading, because it was an agent that was reading the text messages. Now, this is still in the prosecution's case, okay? The prosecution had not rested yet. So in the prosecution's case, they pull up an email, and it was from Whitehead's email address. And the subject was Lamor Whitehead, and it said, please see attachment, and it had home equity line of credit application. So then they had the lady look at the bottom to see how much he said his wages were at the time, that it was $430,000. And then they said, well, go to page 4. What else did you see? So then it was the bank statements. Y'all know we done been through the bank statement. So what this lady did is her job is, in order to do demonstrative evidence, to summarize what the evidence is so it's easier to digest, the trial team puts it in order. Like they'll summarize it, but they'll give documents, obviously, from where it came from, original documents. So her job is to make sure that it's correct. So she's part of the government, but she makes sure that there's no errors or if anything or whatever. So they basically went through different emails, and on these emails, Whitehead had attachments. So there was another email, and it was to Heather Combs, who was an underwriter, and it was on September 29th of 2021 at 10:04 a.m. And the attached documents, he basically said in the body, here are the remaining conditions and personal financial statements to complete the HELOC loan amount as requested. So he attached some of those Wells Fargo documents, and there was an August 31st, 2021 account, an account from Wells Fargo, and the ending balance was $346,351. So then the lady had in the chart the real amount from his real account, I guess. And it said the real Wells Fargo statement was $12,920.99. So what was very interesting about this is, so allegedly, because this is going to be up to the jury in a minute. So what they were showing is, say, for instance, Whitehead had a Wells Fargo bank account, and the balance was $3 million. It would be like $3,250,000. I'm just going to make a number up. He did have one over 3 million, but I don't remember what the remaining, like the other amount of it was, but it was over $3 million. If he got a loan for one entity, he would use that same fake bank account. That's what's alleged. he would use the same bank statement and it would have $3 million, but it would have the date of maybe January 2021. Then a year later, I want to get a loan from XYZ. I'm going to use the same bank statement, but I'm changing the date to affect so that it can go for whatever they need for this loan. So what the lady was able to show in the chart was that the same statements were being used and the dates were being changed because it was the same like ending balances and stuff at the bottom of those statements. So there was a few emails of those. Then there was one from Bethpage Federal Credit Union on September 30th, 2021. And from the credit union, that statement was the beginning balance was $0. He asked for a line of credit from Bethpage for $500,000. The documents and stuff were attached. He got this $500,000 and they showed it in the account. But you know, the documents that's allegedly being used to obtain these loans are made from fake documents, is what, you know, is being alleged. So then the lady goes through the account. Now, mind you, he gets this deposit for the credit line. So they go through and they say he basically spent like $100,000 at Joseph Jewelry. He gave $5,000 to a Derek Whitehead. By the time he had all these deductions, he had about $12,420 left. He gave, okay, let me start, because from the $500,000, the first wire transfer was to Lamor Whitehead Inc. Okay, that was $254,980. Then there was a wire of $132,500. So it was like a D and app something. I don't know what that is. Then there was $100,000 withdrawal to a Joseph Jewelry. Then it was $5,000 to Derek Whitehead. So afterwards, it was only like $12,420. So then she goes over the Wells Fargo statements and she goes over she starts going over different purchases. So she saw like there was an October 21st statement. And of course, that was after the account was actually made April 7th, I believe it was, of 2018. So anything December 2018, they saying it's not a real statement. And we're going to get into that when we get into his testimony. So basically what this lady did was she was summarizing a lot of the testimony that I told you guys about, and she was doing it in a chart. But what she also did was she showed when the $90,000 was in the account for Pauline Anderson. The lady basically had this chart, right? The chart had all these different logos on it. And so on the logos on this slide, it had A&M Discount Furniture. It had DoorDash. It had Walmart. It had airlines and hotels. It had Louis Vuitton. It had Polo, Foot Locker, and then it had payments for cash apps. So the deposit for the $90,000 was done on November 30th of 2020. So the government, in their infinite wisdom, was like, well, let's just see how he spent this money. Because this was like from Lamor Whitehead Inc. And it showed these are all, and they put the logos. They didn't even just put like, okay, $2,000 from here, $4,000 from Gucci. None of that. They put all the logos to where he spent the money. So they were able to calculate that about $60,000 of that money was gone by the end of the month, by the next month or whatever, by the end of the pay period or the statement period. for that $60,000. It was so much of that it's just, I don't even want to, I'm trying to get. I'm not, a lot of that stuff again was just so then after the lady gets done, they said the prosecution rests, the government rests. So we was sitting there like, is he gonna testify or not? So I actually heard yesterday that he said he was gonna testify, but because he has the right, he doesn't have to testify, he could change his mind, whatever, I didn't know if he was, so I didn't want to get y'all hopes up. And then he changed his mind because it's not his burden, it's the government's burden. So he doesn't have to testify. Then I did see his, for those of you that are not blocked, he did put this up, and that was 13 hours ago. And he said, Grandma, you taught me how to fight, and you told me to never give up. Time to make you proud. I'm standing on the rock where Moses stood, just like you taught me. Victory. This is for those of you that are blocked. Because he ain't blocked me. Listen. He ain't blocked me yet. And so they said Lamor Whitehead is going to testify. I said, everybody looked at each other. Suddenly, every AUSA on the floor. Now, it wasn't nothing but about 3-4 of us watching the trial. Baby, them dang on attorneys came in like, shoo, 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 and all of a sudden, we just had a whole crowd. Everybody was in there like, wait, what? And they was say, yes, he's going to testify. So Whitehead gets on the stand. He walks up. He got his water. Because, I'm going to make y'all feel like he was there. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Your girl got you. So he gets his water. He says, good morning to everyone. My name is Bishop Lamor Whitehead. This is how he's looking at the jury. So then the attorney says, Bishop Whitehead, could you tell us about who you are? Tell us about yourself. He said, I was raised by a single parent. He said, my father, Arthur Miller, was beaten. And the government said, objection, objection. Everybody looked at each other like, And then he said, motion in limine. So what happened is when you have a motion in limine, basically, if you know you're going to have evidence that you're going to object for to, you have the judge, and we went over this on this channel, you have the judge review what the issue is, and she'll make a ruling. So apparently she already made a ruling that he can't be talking about Arthur Miller. So the judge sustained it. Lisa. That's what he said. I'm just reporting. I told y'all in the beginning, I need y'all to focus. He said, I went to high school. He talked about his high school he went to in Brooklyn, or wherever he went. He said he finished his undergrad. He went to New Mexico to school. He said he finished at the Theological Seminary, Rising Hope. He said he also has received his doctorate in theology and business. Many of us did see that on his Instagram page. Those of you that's not blocked, of when he got his doctorate degree. To Queen, stop. Oh, Pam, here you go again. I'm going to be the first person to buy tickets for you. I'm trying to give you guys how it happened. I'm so serious. Okay. So then they said, are you married? He said, yes. I am married to my lovely wife, Asia Whitehead. I have 4 children, Heaven, Dejan, Jaden, Soraya, I think it's her, how do you say her name? And he said, and my baby girl, Brooklyn, who runs the house, she's 2 years old. So then he says, tell me about your interaction with people. He said, well, growing up in Brooklyn, it was not easy. Being raised, I had an older sister. I had 3 siblings, but my older brother was killed when I was 3 years old. I didn't have any male figures in my life. My uncle did the best he could. My mom raised me. She did the best that she could. My mama was the typical parent on food stamps, not being able to afford things that I was supposed to have. But I feel like my mom did an amazing job. So then the question was, thank you, Kim Crochet, for the super sticker. I appreciate it. He said, well, do you get into disagreements with people? Because remember, I told y'all about that rah-rah video and stuff that came out yesterday. He was like, growing up, I didn't have any male figures. So I dealt with the level of rejection. Rejection can be a disease. You feel like people are coming against you. The judge was like, I'm going to need you to answer the question. Okay? I need you to listen to the question and don't go into narratives. Okay? He was like, yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor. So then his attorney said, do you think rejection causes issues? He said, yes, it's a level of immaturity. I'm working on it, though. He said, but it has helped me to be a better teacher, because when you go through failures, you become a better teacher for other people. He said, so then the attorney said, well, what were you doing at the time of the incident with Rashid Anderson and Pauline? And he said, well, this year I'll be a bishop for 8 years. Objection. Like, we just gonna need him to answer these questions. He said, well, so then he answers, so the judge tell him answer questions. Well, I met Rashid at Watch Night Service. So then he goes into what Watch Night Service is, bringing in the New Year's with Christ and all of that. Then he said Rashid and his wife, they had it at the hospital in the auditorium is where they had the Watch Night Service. So he said Rashid and his wife, they came in and they wanted to be a part of his ministry. So he said, basically, he said, I have a lot of people that want to follow me because I take people as they are. They come to me and they have tattoos. They can have, they can dress down. He said, it's just a nice vibe, so that people like the vibe, it's a pure vibe. So people wanted to come to my church. So they wanted to come. So the following Sunday, Rashid and his fiance then came to the church. He said, well, what type of services did Anderson provide? He's like, he did media, he dealt with the church logo. I also ordained him as a junior minister. Then he said, he said, yeah, and also I'm a teacher of financial literacy. He said, so I have like 100 students that become a part of my ministry. That's in my ministry that become a part of my class. he had aspirations because, you know, talking about Rashid Anderson, he wanted to make more money. He told me he was a real estate agent in 2013. However, he wanted to make more money. So he wanted to learn about the buying and the investment side of it. So then the attorney said, could you explain seed and tithe? He said, it's biblical. It's built on the church. You know, the church is a not-for-profit. We don't sell items. You know, we don't sell things. And it's based on Malachi 3, chapter 3, verse 8. Every church, synagogue, every mass, everyone does tithes and offering. Basically, that's how the church survives, you know. Then he talked about the seed, and he said, you know, the way the seed is as you believe. You know, it's similar to the stock market. You have faith, and then you believe in what you sow. God's gonna do. You have to believe what God's gonna do for them. That what they sow, they are going to get back. So he goes back into Rashid, who came to him talking about he wanted to get into real estate. Said, do you want to own? And then he said he can ask him, do you want to own your own home? And then he said, can you repeat the question? Because his attorney asked him, like, did you want to own your own? Did Rashid want to own his own home? So he asked, can you repeat the questions? So he said, yes. Yeah, Rashid wanted to own his own home. So I connected him with Mark Kaplan, who was the banker. You know, he's able to help him with the mortgage part of it. So he did buy a house. He wasn't the one. Whitehead said he wasn't the one to find the house for Rashid, but he connected him to a realtor. He knows that he got a low pre-qualification amount. So then his attorney said, did you have direct knowledge that he wasn't qualified? Then he said, you know, objection, hearsay. And then he was like, he responded, I can't remember how the judge ruled, but the thing with Rashid, he said, credit wasn't the problem for Rashid, it was his income. So then his attorney was like, did you advise him on what he should do? He said, I told him he has to get a house that's within his range that he's qualified for, or he's going to have to get him a co-signer, but the co-signer has to live in the house with him. That's what he said. He told Rashid. Because, you know, that's kind of the big thing where they were cross-examining him about the FHA loan, that if you put your name on it, you know, allegedly with no documentation from the closing, they were saying you got to have your name on it. That they had to have the name on it. So then he said, when did you meet Pauline? He's like, I met her via telephone, maybe mid or towards the end of February, beginning of March of 2020. Then the attorney said, at some point, did she visit the church? I believe she came to the church maybe once, but she was not a member. Y'all know Pauline wasn't no member. He done said that. He done said that a few times. Pauline was not a member. And then I guess she said something that she wanted to own property, that Rashid wanted to own property, and texted him and said that she wanted to own property herself, and that's the reason why she didn't want to co-sign. So allegedly, he texted his mom, I guess, and said, hey, I'm gonna need you to co-sign. And she was like, no, she don't want to co-sign. So what Whitehead was saying was that Rashid let Whitehead know that she wasn't feeling comfortable about the co-sign. What was very interesting about this was there were phone call records that showed that there were three-way conversations. But he didn't really mention that in his direct, and they really didn't say that in the cross either. But he just said that they hadn't really had a conversation. But it was clear from the records there were a few conversations of which they were on. Unless he's saying he didn't directly talk to her. So then they asked, well, who did you talk to primarily? He was like, Rashid. I only talked to Rashid. The only convo was when she texted me in March of 2021 when she said she wanted her money back. That I never had a relationship with the mom. I never had a relationship with the mom. So I just want y'all to know what his arguments are gonna be. What basically his arguments are. So then he said, I'm only in the area of getting investment properties. So then they start asking him about what's FHA loans. And then he says he goes into everything, and then he confirms you have to be a primary resident. Then they ask what's a conventional loan, and he's like, it's not government backed. So basically they can make their own creative ways, whatever programs in order to get the loan. So then he says, at some point, did Rashid Anderson come to you regarding investment? Whitehead said yes. And what was the terms of the agreement? He said, well, Rashid asked me, he just got married. I understand, he had just got married. He was planning on having a kid. And so he wanted to be able to get with me so that we can buy certain properties. So he wanted to try to start flipping properties. And he said, I was like, son, listen. So he said he was calling him his son. So he said, son, listen, when you get the money, basically you can be able to invest, but you don't really have any money to invest. So get yourself together, get your coins up, and then maybe we could talk investment. He said, get your money up, though. He didn't say coins. That's just him saying coins. But he said he came to him and told him about, basically he asked his mom, and allegedly he asked another person about getting money in order to start investing. And Whitehead said, I told him, okay, whatever you do, make sure you have a contract. You need to draft this contract or whatever, because they cannot touch this money for at least a year. So he said, you have to have a contract. So then they put up the government exhibit of the text message where all the text messages that we went over already. So it was a text message where Pauline Anderson was asking for money. There was a text message of Rashid going back and forth with Whitehead, related to, the mom asking for the money back and all of that. I told you I got so many notes. This is just so ridiculous. Oh my gosh. So then he asked, when did Anderson give you the money? He said November of 2020, Rashid gave the money. So he acknowledged he was given the money. He said, my mom trusted him, meaning Rashid. Mom did not come with Rashid. He brought it to Whitehead's house. So he gave him $90,000. So he said, at the time he gave you the money, did the agreement change? Whitehead said no. So he's trying to allege that the money was Rashid's portion of starting to invest in properties with Whitehead. So I guess it didn't have nothing to do with really getting Pauline a house, according to him. It was really whatever percentage you put into the investment that I get, you're going to get that percentage and get that money out. So the plan was about taking mom's money and flipping houses. Somehow, apparently there's a disconnect because, again, Pauline Anderson was very clear she was trying to buy a house. A lot of text messages mentioned her getting a house. And he made it like Rashid was expecting a profit off of this money too. So he's given all of the formula, I guess, of when you have a flipper. Now, what I will say is the way it was described by Pauline Anderson did not make sense to me. I was trying to figure out how she was saying it. So what Pauline Anderson was saying is she gives him $90,000. He buys the property, he fixes it up, and then he deeds it to her. Then she's allowed to refinance or whatever she got to do with the house. and then he gives her the $90,000 back. Like none of that like added up to me. Like what I was thinking, perhaps, so his way didn't make any sense to me, but her that way didn't even make sense to me. So what it felt like was, it did feel like some type of investment, because when you do fixer upper, I felt like he was using her money like a hard money lender or something, and he was getting the 90,000 because he was supposed to pay her $100 per month in interest. He did acknowledge that. So it's supposed to be $100 per month in interest that he was paying her. So clearly he was supposed to hold the money for a year. And so that whole situation on what that was is just still confusing to me. And the trial really didn't answer that question. But anyway, I digress. So Whitehead goes on to say, you know, he did say that he said he was responsible for the money. He said Rashid was always looking for more money, you know, to help him out. And so that was the whole thing about flipping the properties. Then it was kind of all over. It was a lot on the loan portion. So Whitehead told Rashid to go to Mark to try to get a deal. The guy, Mark, the same person that he went to, but he couldn't get a deal. I'm pretty much telling you guys what his argument is, because yeah. So then they go in about the disagreement. So at some point, Rashid and Whitehead have a disagreement. And Rashid said that it was basically because when Rashid testified, he said that he and Whitehead fell out because once his wife was pregnant, he just could not spend the time he did with the church because he poured so many hours into the church. So he was saying he ain't got no time for it. Okay. And so Whitehead was getting mad. So then they asked, he said, so the question was asked about the disagreement. Did you have a disagreement? Whitehead said yes. He said, well, ministry has a lot of angles and personalities. And Rashid was getting into it with different arguments with leaders. He was very disrespectful speaking to the leaders. Therefore, you know, he was extending his power because he was close to me and we had a relationship. I said, this mug sound like some Eric Adams stuff. Like, what? So he said basically he was getting out of pocket because he was close to him. So he felt like, you know, that he was taking advantage of the relationship that they had. So then he said, because, you know, I had to take corrective action. You know, people mentored me, you know, and told me to bring it down when it was time to bring it down. He was like, then he lashed out on me in public. He lashed out on me in front of other people. And I can't have that, because as a leader, if I allow him to get away with, you know, lashing out on me in public, then everyone's going to think it's okay. So he had to like correct him. He said, you don't speak to your bishop that way. So he told him, I'm sitting you down. I'm sitting you down. I'm sitting you down, Mr. Rashid Anderson. He said, I'm sitting you down to humble yourself. Because he don't want everybody else. He don't want his church. He said, my church will start running amok. I can't have my church with these 20 people running amok. That's what he said. Okay, he ain't say 20 people. I said that. So then he mentions, he said, it was conversation. I guess what Whitehead was going with this is that, you know, sometimes even when you have things going on in your life, like even though Rashid's wife was in the hospital, had a tough pregnancy and all of that, and she was in there a little bit longer than anticipated, you know, life does that, but you still have to do ministry if you're in ministry. So he uses an example and said his mother-in-law died. He said, he told the jury, my mother-in-law died in 2020. And as a pastor, I had to keep going. I mean, just because you have a baby doesn't mean you can't do your job. I had to keep going as a pastor. I believe he said she had like pancreatic cancer or something. So he was saying I still had to, do what I had to do, even when my mother-in-law was going through that. So I was trying to tell him, when you're in ministry, you still have to do what ministers do. And so after they had this argument, Whitehead testified that suddenly Rashid wanted the money back that he had taken for the $90,000. So it was a text basically saying, oh, I think this is ironic that once we got into it or whatever, and we not cool no more, now you want your money back. So he said he let him know it was a year contract. He said he don't work like that. It's an investment. And in the actual text, he said, I've already invested the money. That was in May of 2021. He said, I already invested the money. So they asked him, well, where's the investment at? Show us the documentation of the investment. And he never showed it to him. Then he said he told him, I've paid thousands of dollars to you. I've paid your house note. I've paid thousands of dollars for your car note. I've given you groceries. I said, if you want to try to pull this on me to try to punish me because you mad at me, so now you want the $90,000 back, then deduct everything line by line of everything that I did for you for that money. And then come to me after you do that deduction. So then they go over them same texts, between them and Pauline. So then they say, before that text, did you receive any complaints on the delay in getting the house? He was like, no. I sent him websites. So Whitehead said he sent Rashid different websites on where he can buy properties, like buy them wholesale or buy low price homes. I guess there's certain websites, and he sent them to Rashid so Rashid could be looking for them. So then they said, when you buy houses, how long does it take to fix up? And he was like, well, it depends on the damage. So then he goes into whether you got to gut the house out and all of that. It might take 2 to 3 months. Then take about 2 to 3 months to sell. So then they asked him, the rendition of how Miss Pauline Anderson said your deal was, what is is that how you understood it? He was like, no. He basically was saying it didn't make any sense mathematically, which I have to agree with, because it ain't make no sense to me. But his ain't make too much more sense. But it didn't. It wasn't clicking for me. I ain't no real estate person, but this was not clicking for me at all. But because he was basically saying if you give me $90,000 to buy your house, but then I he used $600,000 as renovation. I don't know what you rent on for $600,000, but he used that as an example. He said, if I put $600,000 of my money in there, why would I turn the deed over to you after I put $600,000 of my money? Then you own the house. That don't even make no sense. Which it really don't make no sense, but. That's what he was saying. Why he used $600,000? I was like, what? How much do it take to rent a house? $600,000. You should have tore that joint down. Just started from scratch. But anyway, I'm moving on because we gotta get to this cross. Because I'm just getting his testimony out. Let's see, because I want to get to Belmonte. Wait a minute. Then it was a text message. So wait a minute, on the stand, y'all, I gotta tell y'all this. So on the stand, Whitehead was reading text messages. You know how I told you the agents and stuff will read the text messages, or the government would read text messages back and forth. So he put text messages and he was having Whitehead read them. And he was reading I went to the store and I bought a candy bar. And so he read one of the texts, but then it was a text, and I'm not joking. The text was probably just like this. It was so long. So he puts it on the screen and he starts to read that bug. he started reading the long text back from Rashid, the judge was said, "Excuse me, this is a long text. We've heard this before. Can you just ask a question? Thank you." He started reading that book. Everybody was like, "Oh man," because it was super long. So the judge was like, "We've heard that before. Can you just like not? Can you just not?" And we like move on. It's like, okay. So he goes on and he said, "I'm angry with you, but it was an investment. Now we have a disagreement, trying to put me in this jacked up position." So he's trying to explain like these texts and stuff where he's seems like he's being a little aggressive. So he feels like Rashid and them is putting them in this bad light or whatever, or, you know, putting them in this position because they want this $90,000 back. And then he says, "Did you want to pay Miss Anderson her money back?" No, wait a minute, let me get the question. Why not just give her money back? I said, that's what I was saying like 2 years ago. Like, why not just get this lady out? We're going to avoid all this stuff because clearly, regardless to whether it was a misunderstanding on what the money was used for, clearly ain't belong to you. And I'm sure she ain't give it to you to buy no DoorDash and Louis Vuitton and Polo and all of that. She ain't just giving you no money to do what you want to do with it. So that's what I said a couple years ago. If you really like gave her this money, which you're acknowledging on the stand that you did now, then why don't you just give her money back? He said he wanted to give her money back, but he wanted to give her the money less than what was put out. I'm not giving the full money back. And he knows that I told him he needs to tell his mom how I've paid for his mortgages and I've paid for this and I've paid for that. And he needs to let his mama know that. And so the money needs to come out the $90,000 basically. And then he said he wanted to negotiate, but they didn't want to negotiate. Then then he goes to the jury. He was like, and then she sued me for $1 million. Like, he was just appalled. Like, she sued me for $1 million. Over the $90,000 that I gave. And I was like, and my lawyer told me, which we all know, he ain't had no lawyer when all this stuff started. Now, how we know he didn't have no lawyer is because at that press conference, see, I could have cross-examined. I would have paid the government to cross-examine. No, I'm joking. At that press conference, Whitehead was like, I think that's when Ponder first came in, because Ponder was doing them videos and basically was like, if you took this money from this woman, you need to give this money back and all of that. You know, he was going around before he became his attorney. And so at this press conference, like, he had got a default or something, and then they ended up, that's when Ponder took over and went into the case. So he did not have an attorney at first. So I don't know what attorney he's talking about, but he did say his attorney told him to stop all communication with them. Said because he's being sued for $1 million, that he don't need to be talking to them folks. So that's why he ain't giving the money. So anybody that was wondering why Miss Pauline did not get her money, it is because Whitehead felt like he had paid Rashid thousands of dollars to help him with his life, even though he ain't shown not one piece of paper showing where he paid one dime of Rashid's payments at all. No Cash App screenshots, no Zelles, no text, no nothing corroborating what he said. At least Rashid acknowledged that he gave him over $1,000 one time, and it was in a Cash App because he needed it, and told him he gave him $1,500, I think, all together with the seeds when you need a love seed, I think is what they call it. He came and he showed it. Nothing. He said, but he gave him thousands of dollars, and he wasn't about to give him all that money. So for those of you that was wondering what happened with Anderson, according to Whitehead, this is why. Then we move on to Mr. Brandon Belmonte. So Brandon Belmonte, those is all the videos we heard yesterday. So Brandon Belmonte, He said they met through a friend named Eric Davis, who does luxury rentals. He said at that time he had a Lamborghini Euros. He said, and he wanted to get some type of work from Belmonte or something. He was going to get some work done because his homeboy told him go to Belmonte. He said he walked into the place where Belmonte works at, and Belmonte was yelling and acting all crazy and stuff. He was yelling at people. So, you know, Whitehead don't do none of that yelling and stuff. You know what I'm saying? He don't do none of that. So he said he just walked out because he did not like the way he was talking.
You's a clown. That's what you. Why don't you call me a cardboard bishop now? You tough? Call me a cardboard bishop now.
He's not gonna call you that.
Huh? Look on Facebook Live. Call me a cardboard bishop now. You clown. That's what you are. You clown. That's what you are. Why don't you say what you say on Facebook Live, sucker?
No.
He said, so he walked away because he didn't like the way he was talking to people. So he said the day after he got an inbox on Instagram where I guess Belmonte was apologizing and said he knew he was yelling and he was out of order and all that, and he wanted to do business with him. But he said he didn't respond to his, you know, his DMs. So then he said his sister-in-law got into a car accident in like December 2021. And he said, I do know someone, you know, she asked, did he know anybody? So he was like, I do know someone, you know, who can fix your car. So he said he reached out to Belmonte. So Belmonte did fix his sister-in-law's rental. So he said at some point at the end of February, or that was like the end of February, beginning of March, I think is when he got finished like fixing the sister-in-law car. So he said during that time they had conversations, and during these conversations they was talking about, you know, properties. And he said his father had properties in Connecticut and he had properties, you know, so they had them conversations while he was up there going up there when the sister-in-law was getting her car fixed. I don't know. So he told him, Belmonte said, I see you. I've been looking on Instagram and I see you. You do sermons and stuff. And I go online and I see your sermons. He said, I like what you're doing. He said, so then he told him during them visits that he was a hard money lender. And so him and his father like to, you know, basically like to lend money out, you know, if you want to buy property. So he was basically offering his services that he's a hard money lender. So then he said that his wife got into a car accident. And he said, I just had my baby. My baby was only like 2 months old. And, you know, after having a baby, you know, he was kind of explaining how women are, how his wife was very snappy, I guess, or whatever she was during that time. And said, so she needed the car fixed. So I told him, listen, man, I need the car fixed. You know, I need the car fixed ASAP. So then he said when they ended up after about a week, I think they came and picked the car up. Belmonte and them did. Belmonte was like, okay, no problem. So he sent somebody to come pick the car up, but then Whitehead alleges the car was sitting there and they hadn't done anything. So that's supposed to be why he was so angry at him when all this stuff happened in the beginning. So then he says, now this is where the $5,000 come in. Okay, so I want y'all to listen because this is another count. He said the $5,000 came in because allegedly there was Belmonte offered a Cadillac Escalade to be a rental car while she was getting her G-Wagon fixed. Well, according to Whitehead, the G-Wagon, his wife called him like, babe, the car is shaking. And so he didn't want, there was an issue with the rental. So allegedly Belmonte told him, get your wife a car, a rental, and I'll reimburse you. So the judge said, so the rental was $5,000. So then that's when he said, well, what happened was once he did fix the car, he messed up the axle and he messed up the little stepping part on the car. And so I had to get all of that fixed. So all of that came to $5,000. He was like, and Belmonte said that he was going to pay me back. You know, he was the one that offered to pay me back because of what happened. Because he messed my car up. So that's supposed to be where the $5,000 came. For those that care. Then he also mentioned the car. When he got the car back, it wasn't antifreeze in it. It wasn't no oil. He was adding all these issues that was with the car, I guess, to try to get to that $5,000 threshold. So he said, you know, he says that's why he was saying he wanted his money back. And he was like, I kept telling him to come get his car. He actually had the Cadillac in my driveway for over a week, I think, or a couple of weeks. He swear he was calling every day, telling him, come get your broke down rental up off the driveway or wherever it was at. And he didn't even send nobody to come get it. So he said today, remember I told y'all yesterday that the driver Fernandez saw some argument or whatever. So he said he went to the shop to look at his wife's car on that day. And it was in the same condition as when he dropped it off. He said the bumper wasn't even removed. So he showed like text, I guess, when the car first got in an accident. So he mentioned like the pictures. I have text and everything sent that shows, you know, what the car was looking like. He was like, I had a newborn baby. And you sitting here telling me, you know, nothing is getting done. Basically, his wife was irritated. He was like, because she didn't have a car. Well, she didn't have her car. Because I was thinking of something like that. She have a rental. But he made it like she was getting aggravated because there was no car. So then he said, well, what was so that's what the fight was about. That the argument was that the driver was mentioned that I talked about yesterday. So then the attorney said, and I told y'all yesterday, this is where he was going with it. He said, Whitehead claims that he tried to walk away and Belmonte tried to follow him, trying to provoke him. So then they say, well, at some point, did you give him the $5,000? He said, yes, it was. Did he give you the $5,000? He said, yes, it was the day before his birthday that he gave him the $5,000. Then he goes into him and Belmonte has several conversations about going into real estate together. And he also said Belmonte was saying he's a hard money lender. And because he is a hard money lender, he wants to be the one to give him, you know, he would help him out. So he let him know he had this building in Connecticut, which we talked about over here, that is currently going through foreclosure until Whitehead filed bankruptcy for the company. He said he needed $500,000. And he said he already had somebody that was financing him anyway. So he didn't really need it from him. But Belmonte was like, bro, I want to just give you my money. I just want to give you this $500,000. Please take it. And Whitehead was like, no, I was hesitant. I didn't want to take no money from him. I didn't want to take a dime from him. And then he was like, you know, since we was going to do commercial properties together, he was like, I said, you know, I might as well give him a shot. So that's the text message, I guess, when he was asking him for the $500,000. So that's the explanation on the $500,000 that he was asking for. So then he said, I thought it was real weird. You know, he was saying a lot of the conversations that we heard in the audio was not complete conversations between them, obviously, because all of them weren't recorded. But he was like, they've had a lot of conversations, and it was Belmonte that will bring up the information about Eric Adams. It was not him. He said, I thought it was strange. He would just bring it up. He said his dad looked him up and all of that, and seeing that he was good friends with Eric Adams when he Googled Whitehead and all of this stuff. So Belmonte was the one bringing Eric Adams' name up all the time, and he thought it was weird. He also said them wasn't all the calls and phone calls he's had with Eric Adams as well. Let me see. Just so much crap. Oh God. Then he talks, okay, so now that's basically the Belmonte charge. So then he said, he talks about, remember the agents came to his house for the first June 8th for the search warrant for his iPhone. So they were asking what happened at that time, like when they came. So he says, I was going for my morning walk. So he said he didn't come out of his door. He was already outside walking, and he see two guys jump out of the car. And he said it was two at first, and they surrounded me. And they said that I'm not under arrest, but they patted me down. He had his hands in a hoodie. And he said the one guy just grabbed his phone like, give me your phone. He said they grabbed my phone and they said, we got a warrant for this. And they took his phone. So then he said 2 more cars pulled up. So all these agents are in the street. And so because they were all in the street, he's like, I don't want my neighbors to see you bringing attention here. So they moved to the side of the house. So then this is what he said, y'all. Y'all ready for this? He said, all the agents, it was 4 agents there. 2 of them testified. The main agent, Tom Ford, did not testify in this case. So, of course, Tom Ford was doing all the talking, according to Whitehead, because Tom Ford, we didn't hear his testimony. So Tom Ford basically, he said Tom Ford set the warrant. He said he had a cage in the backyard for where he kept his dogs, where his dogs was in the house. He said, so Tom Ford smacks the warrant on there and says, this is the warrant that I have, and I have a warrant for your church. And then he alleges that Tom Ford was like, we really don't want you. We want Mayor Eric Adams. So if you just comply, you ain't even who we want. We want Mayor Eric Adams. This ain't about you. We know you're close to the mayor. And he's like, what you talking about? I've never done business with him. I've never done business with the mayor. We don't even have those conversations. And then he throws in there, he may have reprimanded me, because I told y'all about them text messages yesterday. Said he may have reprimanded me, but that's what mentors do. That's what they do. They reprimand you. But I've never done business. So then he said they asked him if he had another phone that they can call you on. He said, I told them, no, I don't have a phone to call you on. I said, I'm not going to be an informant for the mayor, against the mayor. So what he is alleging is that when the agents asked about a phone, he was saying that they don't have, he was saying, you can't call me because you asked me to be an informant, and I ain't about to be an informant. So I'm not giving you a number because you're not about to call me on no number because I'm not going to be an informant. So basically he wasn't lying about not having another phone. He was just saying, you can't call me because I ain't about to turn on the mayor. First of all, I don't know nothing, but but I wouldn't do the mayor like that. I'm not going to be an informant. So what? He said Tom Ford, that's the main agent, started getting angry when he said he wasn't going to do anything for him. So then he said he called Stacy, who was the owner, I guess, of the event space that we all saw the robbery in. So he called Stacy because all this was at 6 a.m. when the agents came to his house. So he said that they were like, we're gonna bust the door down. So unless you let somebody come in, he's like, whoa. Well, I already, I don't own it. I'm just renting it. So I can call the owner. So he went in to try to call the owner on more than one occasion, and finally they called back or whatnot. And so they opened up the door, I guess, for the FBI to get into the church space. So then at that time, he said, I text Eric Adams. So I told you guys on June 8th, which is the day this happened, there was a text to Eric Adams. So he said he text Eric 911. They said, well, why did you text him? He said, I don't know why I had to let him know what was going on, because I didn't know what was going on. They said that they was after Eric Adams, so I wanted to call him like, yo, E, what's up? Like, why are they coming after me? I don't understand. Like, what's going on with you? So he was calling Eric Adams allegedly because he wanted to see why they were trying to come after him when they really wanted Eric Adams, to ask him what was going on. So then we get to the credit card statements. I mean the bank statements and the applications for all these loans. He said they said, did you make an application to Fendora? He said, never. I've never got a call from anyone from that office. He said, this document, so they put up a document from that Anointing Management Services, Inc. He said, I don't recognize that document. I never called them. I never emailed. I never accepted a loan. I've never had a business loan. He said, my accountant, Israel Vasquez, I've worked with him for years. He named like 2 different accountants, but this is supposed to be the guy, I guess, that he was working with before. And he said, when he does real estate, he puts money in his accounts. He creates whatever companies that he needs. So with every property, he gets another company. And Mr. Israel Vasquez is the one that creates these properties, these entities for him, and he handles his accounts and his money. He said the reason why, he said, yes, he had access to his email accounts and all of that, and his bank accounts, because, Whitehead was out of town a lot, because I don't know if you guys know, but he had a church in Atlanta too. So he was back and forth. I can't look at them through this. He was back and forth between New York and Atlanta. So he don't be having time to deal with all this banking stuff, all this minutia. You know what I'm saying? So he had Israel Vasquez. So then the attorney said something about before Mr. Vasquez died. I was like, nah, I know y'all kidding me, right? So he was like, did he die? And I think Whitehead responded, he doesn't know if he died or not. So I'm not sure, like, with that, is he supposed to be dead or alive or whatnot? But he definitely wasn't there testifying today, because the defense rested. That's they whole testimony was Whitehead. There was nobody else that was witnesses to this case but Whitehead. He said, did anyone apply for a loan on your behalf? That's his attorney. He said, no. Did you at any point authorize a credit check? Whitehead said, no. Because there were documents where he signed asking for credit. Do credit checks for these loans. He said, no, didn't know anything about it. He said, did you ever alter any bank statements? He was like, no. The first time I seen those I didn't know nothing about it until this situation. He said, I never submitted any bank statements to Fundera. So for the bank statements, his arguments is, it wasn't me. I saw your signature. It wasn't me. I saw your ID. It wasn't me. Isn't that your address? It wasn't me. Never saw it a day in my life. So then they asked like what he took because they did a whole nother search warrant in December. I think it was December of 2022, like right before he was arrested. And they took computers, iPads, his paperwork. He said everything, electronics, business files of taxes and properties. And that was pretty much it. I mean, it was a little stuff here and there, but he done got an hour already of my time doing this direct because cross-examination came and the prosecutor came up and she's just the most polite person and you just would not have thought that she was going to go as hard as she did. She went hard in the paint. So then she said, Mr. Whitehead, do you own any bank accounts? He was like, yes. You were in the room when Wells Fargo person said to open. You were in the room when the Wells Fargo person to open up the account, weren't you? Yes. You opened at least 6 accounts at Wells Fargo. Is that correct? She pulled up all 6 of them applications, had him go through his name. That's your name. That's your address, right? This is your company. You said you work for Anointed Management, right? That's you. This is your signature. Is that correct? Went through all of them applications. So then she said, well, we're just going to focus on, you said, can they call Tom Ford to testify since Whitehead made that claim? They've all rested. They're doing closing argument. They don't need Tom Ford. They don't need them. But they've all rested. They've rested. So they have closing arguments on Monday. So then they open up, so they start with the business app. I told you guys that the business application from Wells Fargo, that was from, no. She started out, she went over all the applications for the different bank accounts or whatever from Wells Fargo. So then the government was like, it was an April 18, 2018 business app. And so she pulls up his email and it was from Lamor Whitehead. It was a business application for a loan for Lamar Miller Whitehead, Ford BP, like all these different companies. Then on June 2nd, 2020, there was a business account for Gibson Land LLC. And so then he asked, he said, Mr. Whitehead, are you the sole owner of Gibson Land LLC? He was like, I'm not sure if I'm the sole owner. He was like, she's like, oh, okay, go to page 2 and let's see what you said on your application. So then you look under the ownership, it says sole ownership. Does this refresh your recollection as to whether you're the sole owner? Oh, yes, I am the sole owner. June 2nd, Lamar Whitehead had a business account of which he is the sole owner. They was like, is this your signature? This is a Wells Fargo issued account, true? Is this the correct balance? This shows the balance. And you are the account holder, right? This, you see the start and you see this end date. Let's go to account number 4060 on July of 2018. You see that the ending balance is negative $80.08. And then the account was closed after the negative balance. So the account was closed. The account ended in 4060 was his personal account. And it was closed in July of 2018 with a negative $80 balance. He was like, did you see Miss Burris who just testified? And she showed the document that was on the left and the documents that were on the right. He was like, you see this right here? You see the balance on here for July 2018 says a negative balance. He was like, so is this other statement fake? She straight up asked him, like, is this, so that makes this fake, correct? Because this document is under the same account number, right? But this account was closed on July of 2018, right? But this bank statement says October of 2018. Is that correct? So do you have any reason to dispute this? He says, I don't recall. I've looked at a bunch of documents. I'm going to be honest, respectfully. I don't have a recollection. You know, he spoke a lot about a lot of things, respectfully, but I'll rely on what you said. She said, well, I don't want you to rely on what I said, okay? I want you to tell me if you think this is a fake document. Let's compare each statement one by one, shall we? She said, and that's what she did. She pulled it up. She said, here's a statement. Is this statement fake? He was like, she said, look, this is October 30th of 2018. There is a balance of $3.8 million. Right? Is that true? Did you have this amount in your account at that time? My accountant puts money in and out of my account, so I'm not sure what was in this. What was in my account? So then he said, would you agree with me that the 4060 account, as of that date, that account was closed? It's like, correct. So then she pulls up the Homebridge account from the place where he got the mortgage for his house in Paramus, New Jersey. He said, he pulled up the note. He said, she said, is this your property at 1 Supporter Lane in Paramus? It was like, and the lender is Homebridge. He was like, yes. Said, Whitehead, do you also have an account at Best Page? She was like, correct. Yes, I do. You've gotten a $500,000 loan from them, correct? He was like, yes. You also have an account with FMHL. He was like, I can't say that. You can just show me the documents. I'm not sure if I have a loan with them or not. He was like, the judge was like, he said, so can you show me the document? She's like, answer the question, yes or no. Do you have a loan with FMHL or no? That's a yes or no question. He was like, but I'm asking you a question. I need you, if you have the document, can you show it? The judge was like, that's not how this works, sir. The way this works is she asks you questions. She asks you questions, okay? That's how that goes. So then she pulls up the document from FM Loans, and it has FM Home Loans, so it's not FMHL, I guess. So he was like, oh, that's FM Home Loans. Yes, I do. So then she pulls up the account with the 4060 again, and she has the October 2021, and she said, you see that this that shows this account was closed at the time, but you attach this to your closing documents or whatever from the FM Home Loans, and was like, and it has $3,859,361.67. But you looked at the real document in July that has negative $80. Is this account statement fake? He said, well, obviously it's not real, but I don't know what it is. Do you know Ray Unum, or whatever his name is? He was like, yes, because again, if you watch the other video, there was a check from a Ray Unum or whatever his name is, of which it was from Bank of America, and the guy testified that wasn't a check from Bank of. They didn't have anybody by that name with an account. So he said he did know the guy. So he said he asked him what his email was. So he told him that was his email. He said, what is your relationship with Pauline and Rashid? And so he said, he said, you testify you responsible for the money that you received from Rashid. Is that correct? Because he did say, like, he told Rashid once he get the money, he's the one responsible for the money. So he said, you testify that you're responsible for the money you received from Rashid. He said, yeah. He said, and you received this money in the form of cashier's check. Is that correct? It's like, yeah. So she put up the cashier's check. Is this your signature on the back? This is your endorsement? He's like, yes. So you deposited this in Lamor Whitehead LLC. Whitehead Inc. Is that correct? He's like, yes. And the date you received it was November 30th, 2020. And he said, and you said that you were responsible for this money until November 30th of 2021. Is that correct? Because he kept saying he was supposed to hold the money for a year and he was going to pay interest on it he was going to pay the $100 or whatever every month as interest when he held it. He said, and you told Miss Pauline Anderson that you couldn't give the money back because you were campaigning, correct? He said, I never said that. I never said give until, I said, give me till August, September after the campaign. And then I'll be able to do it. And she repeated it. Didn't Anderson ask for the money? He was like, yes. Didn't Miss Anderson and them ask for proof of where you invested this money? He was like, yeah, but my attorney said don't contact because, she sued me. She was like, didn't Mr. and Mrs. Anderson ask for the Andersons ask for their money back? Yes or no? He's like, yes. He said, and you said that you can't because of your campaign. Yes or no? He started going into, I didn't say that. I was going to give the money back. Mr. Whitehead, my question is very specific, okay? I'm going to need you to answer yes or no. You said you can't give it back because of your campaign. Yes or no? Because you were campaigning. Then she said, you wrote in a text, however, that I can't touch any of the money because I am campaigning. So she put the text up where he actually said he can't touch the money or whatever because he's not campaigning. You said you've already invested it, correct? He was like, yes. And they asked for proof. Is that correct? Yes. And did you show them any proof? No. So you said you closed on a property December 2021. You closed on a property in December 2021. So he testified that in December 2021. So he's saying he had her money in November of 2020. He had actually closed on a property in December of 2021. So basically that money would have been invested and she would have been able to get her money back. So that's what he said in direct and his testimony. So she said, well, you said you closed on a property in December of 2021. Is that correct? And then he said, he started talking about his accountant again. His accountant, Mr. Israel, be doing all this stuff. And it's his accountant that would have all them documents. He was like, because basically what happened is the government issued Whitehead a subpoena. The subpoena requested it was a list of different documents that they wanted in his possession. One of those was some tax returns between 2017 and 2022, any contracts between him and Rashid related to this money, any documents showing that he invested any money, all of this stuff. He asked them for it, but they said they didn't have it, I guess, so they were non-responsive. So he turns around. So she pulls up the subpoena and she puts it on there. She said, didn't we request any contracts between Pauline Anderson and any contracts of Rashid Anderson? And you didn't produce anything. Is that correct? He said, well, they took all my electronics. They took everything or whatever. I didn't have anything in my house. They took everything out of my house or whatever. Talking about the FBI. So she said, isn't it true that we gave discovery and we gave copies of everything that we had? So you have all of the information, all of the pictures of things, all the documents of things that was produced to you. So you had access to all these material. Isn't that right? Nevertheless, you produced no documents. So then he says, well, what about the paperwork? There were boxes and boxes of individual paperwork that they took or whatever that I don't have access to. He said, didn't we give you a copy of everything that we had? And you still can get in your own emails. Isn't that correct? He said, well, I was locked out for a minute. So no, you get in your emails. Is that correct? He said, it's very simple, Mr. Whitehead. It's a yes or no response. So then the judge said, wait, Mr. Whitehead, just look at these requests on the subpoena, what she's talking about. So just look at the paper. He said, no, okay, no, there was no hard contract, paper contract between me and Rashid Anderson. Said, Mr. Whitehead, could you look at item 6? We requested any docs or records reflecting an investment of the $90,000 received from Pauline Anderson. Did you produce this record? I never had it. Yes or no? Did you produce this document? Yes or no? No. Request number 2, any tax returns for Anointing Management Services LLC and any for Lamor Whitehead Inc. for tax years 2017 through 2022. He said, did you produce any of those docs? He said, I was a victim of identity theft. So I couldn't file my taxes. Did you produce it? Yes or no? No. You testified that you were sued by Miss Anderson. You countersued, is that correct? Yes or no? Said, I filed a lawsuit. He said, she said, yeah. He said, yes or no. And he tried to respond, I didn't ask for money. He was like, she said, did you countersue Pauline Anderson? Yes or no? Yes. You filed a lawsuit against Mr. Belmonte asking for $150 million. Yes or no? Yes. On direct, the attorney read from the transcript of recordings that you were played in court during the trial. You were here for those recordings, is that right? Did you recognize the voice of Brandon Belmonte on that recording? You know, in this day and age with AI, it could have been altered. I don't know. Also, you know, the tapes, they wasn't even turned in for 9 days. And then later, there was also some tapes that was turned in. So I think he said 6 days later. So are you saying you don't know? What is your answer? He said, the recordings that were played, do you recognize your own voice on those recordings? He said, yes. He said, didn't one recording say that you had guns in your church? He said, I have armed security in my church. I'm going to ask the question again. Didn't the recording say that you said, and the recording you said that you have guns in your church? Armed security. He kept saying armed security. He said, so is it your testimony that in the recording you used the term armed security? He said, my church got robbed. Objection. Your Honor, could you move the strap? I need him to answer the question. He said, is the term that you used, was it guns? Was the term you used in that audio guns in the church? Yes or no? He was like, yes. She said, Mr. Whitehead, do you know what tax returns are? You do know as a U.S. citizen, you are required to file tax returns. Yes. Have you filed tax returns in the past? My accountant usually does my tax returns, but you signed them, right? Yes. Whatever the accountant says it is, that's what it is. You do know that it's a crime not to file tax returns, is that right? I'm guided by my accountant. So then they pull up an email that has the subject line 2019 taxes. And it's to some other loan place, I guess. He said, did you send this email? And it was from his email that he earlier acknowledged was his email address. Did you send this email? He said, no. He ain't send it. He said, there's a form 1040. So she pulls up the attachment with a form 1040. It says, and it has your home address, right? So in this loan with his email request, whatever it was, there was a tax return attached to it. So she opened it up. So she said, it's a form 1040 in your name. This is your home address, right? Last 4 digits of your social security number. And it says that your taxable income is $382,800. Did you have this amount of income in 2019? These taxes was never filed. My question was, did you have $382,800 that you made in 2019? He ain't really answered. In fact, what you filed in 2019 only had $60. You do realize that we have access that you can go get transcripts to people's tax returns. And in 2019, you put down that you made $60. He said, my accountant has everything. I don't know. Are you aware that the IRS maintains records or what? Are you aware that on that year, the IRS only has $60 of taxable income that year? He said this is the version of the tax return. He said what was showed, he said wasn't sent. That was his accountant, the one that did all of that. He said, I don't know exactly what I made in 2019. I mean, it was a long time ago. It was 5, 3, 2, 1, 5, 20, about 5, 6 years ago. I don't remember what I made. So then they pull up another email to the same spot, and it was attached tax return for 2020. Did you send this email? No. I don't even know who this cnob.com is. Who is that? I asked the questions here, okay? Did you send this email? Now, mind you, this is the email address that he acknowledged was his. Did you send this email? No. So she pulls up the 1040 that was on there for the 2020. You listed that you made $407,600. That's what's listed on this tax return, right? My accountant takes care of my finances. A lot of people had access to my emails. Rashid had access. Other people had access to my emails. It wasn't just me. She said, does Rashid live in your house? He was like, no. Does your accountant live in your house? No. Do your staffers live in your house? He said, I've had some that live with me. He said they became permanent residents at times. Yes, they have. Isn't it true that you never filed a tax return in 2020 with the IRS? So then there's another email attachment from October 7th of 2021 with the 2021 tax return on it. And it has his name. The email, it was a 2020 that was attached to it. It has his name. And he has an application that he was filling out. And in the application, it was October 7, 2021 application where I think he was trying to get a loan. And in the application where it said the income, he said he made, just how much he said he earned, $430,000 for the year. He said that his anointing management services where he worked, he made $35,000 a month. So this is what he said. So they pull up an earning statement, right, from anointing management. It was an earning statement. So she pulls it up. He said, this is just a pay stub. You don't even know what this is. He said, doesn't this year-to-date gross say $327,750.85? He said, but you never filed tax returns in 2021, did you? He was like, no. In fact, you generated this tech stuff from a website called paycheckcreation.com. He said, so that you could qualify for this loan. Is that correct? No. They pulled up an email. He said, here's an email. And they have from paycheckcreation.net. He said, here's the email from paycheckcreation.net to your Gmail account on October 6, 2021. Shit, I ain't never wanted to be an AUSA in my life, but I was like, yes! Bink! Bink! I was like, man, what? Then he says, Mr. Whitehead, you've actually been involved in fraudulent activity in the past, haven't you? Isn't it true that in January of 2006, you were driving a Range Rover and you were pulled over by the police? Not true. And the car that you were driving at the time was in someone else's name. Not true. And you had over 20 parking tickets that were attached to that car. Isn't that true? Yes. Isn't it true? He was like, not true. Everything he was saying, not true. You are fraudulent. You weren't supposed to be using this. This is from a woman in Tennessee. Is that true? Not true. And you are caught taking her identity. Is that true? Not true. You also, the police found a Com Edison bill that was in the lady's name that was from Tennessee. Is that true? Not true. They went through the whole situation and did it line by line. And he just said, not true. And you had a computer of which you had an ex-girlfriend that worked at a dealership. Isn't that true? Not true. And you got caught stealing people's information out of the computer. And that's how you got the people's information. Not true. You and your girlfriend used the information of other people at her job. Not true. And you went and got a loan to buy yourself a motorcycle from this lady's information. Is that true? Not true. Went through the entire scenario of what happened. Said you testified. And then she just moved on like she didn't just like slaughter though. It was just like she moved on like, Mr. Whitehead, you testified about your interactions with the FBI. You remember the conversation? He said only one agent spoke, so that was supposed to be Agent 4. He said in Special Agent 4 asked if I asked you if you had another cell phone. Let me start over again. See, I'm still caught up in the not true. Sorry, guys. So she said, Special Agent Ford asked if you had another cell phone he could call you on. He was like, yes. And you responded, no. He was like, yes. So then he pulls up a text message from January 23rd of 2022 where he texts Rashid that said, I'm calling you from my other phone. And then it has the number to what the other phone is. Then they pull up another text message from someone whose name was in the phone saved as HOMMO2. Y'all spell it how you want to spell it. It was from June 8, 2022, which is the day of the first warrant. And it said, bro, call me 911. And then 1 second later, he said, bro, I'm turning my other phone off. You said it was your other phone, didn't you? On June 8, 2022, here's another text message from somebody who's in there as HOMMI from a 9839 number. It said, bro, call 911. At 8:35, you contacted Eric Adams and said, Eric, this is Lamar. This is my other phone. Need to speak to you 911. Is that true? Because they wanted me to be an informant for the mayor of New York. You also called the mayor from the 9839 number, didn't you? And the mayor was able to reach you on that phone, wasn't he? Yes, it's a family line. The FBI, I don't want them calling me to set up Eric Adams up. To be clear, Mr. Whitehead, they couldn't call you because you told them you didn't have another phone. That's why they couldn't call you. They couldn't call you because you told them that you didn't have another phone. That is why they could not call you. He said, well, I wanted, he said, they told me they was going to make my life a living hell if I didn't cooperate and snitch on Mayor Adams. He said, she said, okay. In May of 2021, what were you driving a Lamborghini? He said, wasn't in May of 2021? That's the time that Miss Pauline was asking for her money back. He said, weren't you driving a Lamborghini and your wife was driving a G-Wagon? I don't recall what we was driving in 2021. He said, don't you have a Rolls Royce? So at the time that you were not paying the Andersons back, you were living at his house on Porter, and was like, and you were driving a Rolls Royce. Is that correct? Yes. They said the government rests. So then they came back on recross, and his attorney came back on recross and said, why didn't you pay back the $90K? He said, because they filed a lawsuit and it was, I was trying to get a settlement agreement, and yes, but we couldn't reach an agreement. He said, he asked about the phone and he responded, they wanted me to be an informant and I felt they wanted to continuously call me. They told me, I told them I had an attorney, but I felt they wanted to continuously call me. So that's why I told them I didn't have another phone. He said, didn't you not file taxes on certain years because your identity was stolen? Said yes. And did you report that? He said, yes, I reported to the IRS and they told me that not to file taxes until I got my identity straight. The defense rests. And that is the testimony for today. Why are you laughing like that? I can't stand that. I can't. Okay, so let's look at this. You asked what the charges were. Let's look this thing up here. Let's grab this indictment here. It's 1,500 of you guys. Go ahead and make sure you hit that like button. I appreciate it. I see the cash apps coming in. I appreciate all of the love.
You was on one
I was just bringing it how it was brought. I'm just saying. Okay. Let me see here. Let's bring up. I'm going to answer your question. So these are the this is the indictment. So this is what, so now you guys are going to have to let me know if you guys believe that the government has proven their, no, don't let me know. That's okay. We'll come back. Okay. So this is the indictment. The charges in this indictment arise from a course of conduct in which Lamor Whitehead, the defendant, sought money and other things of value from victims on the basis of either threats or false promises that the victims' investments with Whitehead would benefit the victims financially. In fact, Whitehead, who leads a church in Brooklyn, New York, intended to and did defraud the victims by taking their money and other property with no intention of investing it, returning it, or enriching the victim. So the paragraph 2, from at least in or about April 2020 up to and including in or about July 2021, Lamor Whitehead, the defendant, elicited approximately $90,000 from an individual who attended his church through a series of cell phone and internet communications with victim 1 and her son. Under the terms of their agreement, Whitehead would use the money to assist victim 1 in obtaining a home, and after doing so, Whitehead would otherwise be able to use the money as an investment in his real estate business. However, shortly after victim 1 transferred Whitehead the money from her retirement savings, Whitehead instead used victim 1's money to purchase thousands of dollars of luxury goods and clothing, and he continued to use victim 1's money for his own purposes. Whitehead never helped victim 1 obtain a home and has not returned victim 1's money despite her request he do so. He acknowledged he has not turned over anything, and they did have a bank statement showing the things that he bought. Paragraph 3, in or about April and May of 2022, Whitehead, the defendant, attempted to convince a businessman to lend Whitehead approximately $500,000 and give him a stake in certain real estate transactions. Whitehead told victim 2 that in exchange for this money and interest in real estate, Whitehead would obtain a favorable action by the New York government for victim 2 that would enrich both Whitehead and victim 2. But Whitehead knew that he had no ability to obtain such actions. Despite that knowledge, Whitehead told victim 2 they would make millions. And as you see from a lot of the text messages, Eric Adams was not, it appears he was not studying Whitehead like that. In fact, he was admonishing him and telling him, stop throwing my name out here like that without my permission. Near the beginning of his relationship with victim 2, Lamor Whitehead, the defendant, also used threats of force to obtain $5,000 from a business owned by victim 2. At the direction of law enforcement, victim 2 made the payment to Whitehead. That's the $5,000 we went over, where Whitehead's argument is he claims that he was owed that money. During the course of the investigation into the conduct of Lamor Whitehead, the defendant, special agent of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, executed a search warrant for cell phones on the person of Whitehead. Whitehead told the agents that he owned only one cell phone, which was then on his person, when Whitehead knew that he in fact owned a second cell phone, which he regularly used before and after the execution of the warrant, including to send a text message in which Whitehead identified phone 2 as, quote, my other phone, shortly after telling the agents that he had no other phones. So count 1, the grand jury charged him with wire fraud. So it has from at least in or about April 2020 up to and including in or about June 2021 in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, Lamor Whitehead, the defendant, having devised and intended a scheme and artifice to defraud and for obtaining money and property by means of false and fraudulent pretenses, representations, and promises, transmitted and caused to be transmitted by means of wire, radio, and television communication in interstate and foreign commerce, writing, signs, signals, pictures, and sounds for the purpose of executing such scheme and artifice. To wit, Whitehead made material misrepresentations to victim 1, which is Anderson, and her son to obtain money from victim 1 as a purported real estate investment, which he received in part through use of an interstate wire when he in fact intended to use the investment in whole and in part for personal purposes. That is count 1. Attempted wire fraud. It looks like it's between the same April and, in or about April and May 2022 in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, Whitehead, the defendant, having devised and intending to devise a scheme of artifice to defraud and for obtaining money and property by means of false and fraudulent pretenses, representations, promises, transmitted and caused to be transmitted by means of wire, radio, television, communication, and interstate and foreign commerce, writing, signs, signals, pictures, and sounds for the purpose of executing such schemes and artifice to wit. Whitehead made material misrepresentations to victim 2 to interstate communications and otherwise in an attempt to convince victim 2 to transfer money or other property. Attempted extortion. From in or about February 2022 through in or about April 2022 in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, Whitehead, the defendant, knowingly and willingly committed and attempted to commit extortion, as the term is defined in 18 U.S.C., by obtaining and attempting to obtain money and property from another person with his consent, which consent was and would have been induced by the wrongful use of actual and threatened force, violence, and fear, and thereby would and did obstruct, delay, and affect commerce and the movement of articles and commodities in commerce, and as the terms defined in 18 U.S.C. To wit, Whitehead used threats of force to attempt to obtain $5,000 from a business located in part in Bronx, New York, and owned by the victim. False statement. On June 8, 2022, this is the day of the execution of the warrant in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, Whitehead, the defendant in a matter within the jurisdiction of the executive branch of the government of the United States, knowingly and willingly falsified, concealed, and covered up by trick, scheme, and device a material fact that made a material, false, fictitious, and fraudulent statement and representation to wit during the execution of a search warrant for cell phones on Whitehead's persons. This ain't the last one because he had a superseding. It's another one in here. I mean, those are all in there, but it's also a here goes the superseding. I'm like something's missing on here. Let me show you guys. Let's see. What they added. Let me see. Okay, in or about June 2018, Lamor Whitehead, the defendant, submitted an online loan broker an application for a $250,000 business loan for Anointing Management Services, LLC. In the business loan application, Whitehead misrepresented the finances of AMS, LLC, including by submitting fabricated bank statements for an AMS LLC account at Bank One. Whitehead ultimately was not issued the business loan. So on that one, he wasn't even given a loan. However, Whitehead continued to use fabricated bank statements for the Bank One account, among other fabricated bank records for AMS LLC from at least in or about October 2018 up into including in or about February 2019 in an effort to obtain a mortgage in excess of $1.3 million to fund Whitehead's purchase of a home in Paramus, New Jersey. The material false statements in the loans application included, among other things, entirely fabricating a bank account that did not in fact exist and altering bank statements for the Bank One account to indicate the AMS LLC had an average balance in excess of $2 million, when in fact during that time period, AMS LLC had an average ending balance of less than $10. So that is the bank information. All the rest of this, I think, is the same. Let me see what the count is pertaining to that. I was attempted wire fraud, attempted extortion, false statements, wire fraud. So he got a wire fraud for the situation pertaining to the application to get his house. And there's a forfeiture allegation as a result of committing the offense alleged counts 1, 2, and 5 of the indictment. Whitehead, the defendant, shall forfeit to the United States pursuant to Title 18 and all the rest of them codes, any and all property, real and personal, that constitutes or is derived from proceeds traceable to the commission of said offense, including but not limited to a sum of money in United States currency, representing the amount of proceeds traceable to the commission of said offense. As a result of committing the offense alleged in count 3 of this indictment, Whitehead, the defendant, shall forfeit to the United States any and all property, real and personal, that constitutes or is derived from the proceeds traceable to the commission of said offense, including but not limited to a sum of money in the U.S. currency. So basically, if he still got them Gucci suits and stuff and them Louis Vuittons, if he gets found guilty, they trying to forfeit it. Jaleesi said, I'm sure. You know what? A lot of the stuff they show, even with the tax return, some of this stuff, the thing is, this is why you don't have the burden as a defendant. This is why it's usually, unless it's like a self-defense or something where you have to have your client, you don't have the burden. That's why it's very tricky to have a defendant testify, because they entered in evidence that was not entered into before during the case in chief. Like, I didn't see those tax returns. They didn't bring up the check stub place where allegedly he got the check stub. It was just some things I didn't see. And so it was like, they had it, I think, as exhibits, but they were trying to cut things down because they didn't need it. They didn't need to use it. But on cross, they was she was just so smooth with it. Like, and you were driving in a car in 2006 when you were pulled over. Is that correct? Because you were driving a stolen vehicle that was not in your name. Is that correct? Like, it was just like how she was doing. It was like that. Well, he didn't. So there was a motion in limine, from my understanding, of which they could not bring up that he was convicted of a crime or did prison time. And the reason being, I would presume, is because it's more prejudicial. Because first of all, he's been out for 10 years, I think. And that's usually, theft or dishonesty usually goes to credibility. But they'll also weigh if it's more prejudicial. If you were accused of similar type crimes in the past, of course it's going to be, all evidence obviously is prejudicial, but there are some that is more prejudicial than not. So from my understanding, there was a conversation. So there was a motion in limine where basically they weren't going to admit it. So, but it sounds like she was still allowed to bring up some of the facts that had to do with it, because that's pretty much what she did. The prosecutor did. You know what? She said the less than $10 sends me every time. No, he's out on bond now. What else we got? Deborah Bell, thank you so much. Thank you. Toria said, Pam, thank you so very much for going to the trial and bringing us the tea firsthand. May God continue blessing for you and your family. Thank you so much. You know what? Y'all is horrible. You said Gloria God Church still been praying. Yeah, they still in court for that. They're still in court for Glory God. They're still in court for Pauline Anderson. They're still in court. I think they go back in like April or May or something. But that is his defense. He testified on his own. So sorry. You said I make you laugh. I'm glad I could bring a little bit of laughter in your life. Thank you so much for the super chat. That's his argument. Again, to wrap it up for those of y'all that didn't hear, he said it was an investment on Pauline Anderson and he was trying to settle, but they ain't want to settle because he wanted to deduct all the money that he gave to Pauline's son. Like that had something to do with her. I don't know what that's about, but that's the argument. He said the $5,000 situation was because he got a rental and they messed his car up, and so he's supposed to pay him $5,000. So that's what a $5,000. He said the $500,000, he said he actually wasn't trying to act like he can give Belmonte a connection with Eric Adams. He said that Belmonte was trying to get him before off the record that we don't see on any recordings or any text messages because it doesn't encompass everything. He said that they were trying to be hard money lenders for him before, and he was hesitant and he didn't want to do it. And then he decided that he was going to go ahead and, give Belmonte, I guess, to show his, since he was going to go in the future doing partnerships with Belmonte in the future, he wanted to show, that they all work together, and he was going to use him because he already was in a refinance process and he already had people that want to get him loans, according to him. So he just was like, so that's that. And then on the lying to the FBI agent about the cell phone, he basically said, well, I was just saying I ain't want them calling my phone like that because they wanted me to be an informant for Mayor Eric Adams, and I wasn't about to do it. So there you have it, guys. Those are the arguments from Lamor Whitehead. Thank you, Shamika. I appreciate that. We've been on here for a couple of hours. I hope you guys enjoyed this live. Thank you guys for your continued support. I got to get back home. Okay, like it's been all cool, but we gotta get up out of here. It didn't rain half the time. Today's the first day. I think it did not rain while I was here. The traffic is horrible. It absolutely sucks. I'm not used to that. I have paid $1 quadrillion in tolls. We do not have tolls in the state of Michigan, but baby, I had to get one of them little easy passes because I got tired of stopping. And every time I turn around, I get an email. We just replenished. I'm like, yeah, I got to get up out of here because I feel like I shouldn't have hit one bump. I shouldn't have hit one pothole. I shouldn't be caught. All that money that I spent, I feel like I shouldn't have no traffic that I'm going by. I shouldn't have any of them problems because this is, this different. I think New York is cool to visit, but yeah, it's about time for me to go. I got to go. And Dev, he's been a trooper. He can drop me off in front of the building every morning and pick me up. Then I homeschool, so he basically was doing the work with my daughter. So he actually had to sacrifice as well. So shout out to Dev, of course, for always having my back. But I'm gonna go. I hope y'all enjoyed this. I promise y'all I was gonna bring y'all the Whitehead stuff, and I did. Next week, what happens next is on Monday. The government and the defense, they both are going to do closing. There's called summation, and they have an hour and a half according to the judge. And then the jury will get their charging instructions, which is basically instructions on, how they deliberate. Then they go and they deliberate and they get the case. So they will have the case probably by about 1:00 on Monday. So if that's the case, they may have a verdict on Monday, or they may, if they don't have it on Monday, then they have to come back on Tuesday and deliberate. But that's all I got. Y'all have a good night. Thank you again for all. Let me make sure I thank y'all for the cash, because I appreciate it. And I want y'all to know that I do. Thank you, Deborah. I thank you so much. That was very kind of you for the cash app. Katina and Sandra and Amathea. Thank you. She done sent $100. Amathea, thank you. Sharon and Linda and Kim and Trudy, John, Joyce. Thank you so much. Jacqueline sent something earlier while I was at the court. So I thank you so much for that as well. You got something?
Inspire asks if you have a PO box that she can send a donation.
Yeah. Let me see. Give me that.
I said we would put it in the chat before we got off.
Okay.
I want to interrupt your role play.
I was not role playing. What was? You are funny. What is it? Put the numbers on. This is my PO box in the chat. And you said 2 more cases coming down the line. What you talking about, Jeff? Oh my gosh. Right. Thank you, and to all the new members. I think I hit all the super chats. Pam Stop got me about the salty tears. GG. I was just saying what they were saying. Thank you, Grown Woman Vibes, for the memberships. I appreciate that. Thank you, Cupcakes, for the memberships. I appreciate that. Y'all make sure y'all, I know I'm all late. Y'all might be off of here, the ones that got it. Yes, bees on Mars, it can. It absolutely will. When you go to the sentencing guidelines, they do look to see if you actually have a past criminal history in the sentencing guidelines. So hopefully that answered your question. Thank you so much for gifting 5 memberships, GC. Okay, we're gonna have a bunch of members. Okay, y'all gonna make me go over there a little bit more often because it's gonna be a whole crew.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, D Queen. I appreciate $2. I appreciate you.
You's a clown. That's what you. Why don't you call me a cardboard bishop now? Huh? You tough? Call me a cardboard bishop now.
He's not gonna call you that.
Huh? Look on Facebook Live. Call me a cardboard bishop now. You clown. That's what you are. You clown. That's what you are. Why don't you say what you say on Facebook Live, sucker?
No.
Thank you guys. Have a good